Daniel chapter 12, verse 4 says that they are running to and fro to those who never studied, running to and fro to men of their own precepts in the earth. They are running to and fro to men and women who never studied any of the Masoretic texts of the Hebrew prophets or of Micah, the so-called Maristite, who also wrote Masoretic texts as a servant of Yud-Heh-Wav Yahweh. Micah also wrote Mikra of the Christian scriptures. Did you not know that? Micah wrote and studied the Masoretics and the Mikra of the Christian scriptures that all Christian churches and their clergies are using today, every Sunday in their churches. They never studied the Bible, but yet they're using it. That's the Mikra of the Christian scriptures, the Miqra. Go and look it up and study it. You claim to be two witnesses. You're running to and fro to people who never studied the theory and methods of the Biblia or the measure of its disciplines that range from archaeology, literary criticism, its history, the philology, and the social science. You never studied any of that. Never studied any of the world's seculars, as well as the religious universities, or what they hold in their colleges that offer courses in biblical and biblical studies. Biblical and biblical. I am testifying to you that Daniel in chapter 12 and verse 4 says that there are many who are running to and fro who never conducted religious studies, who never conducted a study of theology or took a course of Judaic studies or its history, and never wrote a book on comparative literature. Never wrote a book on comparative literature. So how in hell can any of these so-called YouTube or Facebook biblical scholars or self-proclaimed two witnesses of African-American parents, oh Jacob, explain any of the prophetic cryptograms of Yud-Heh-Wav Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, that are sealed? How did you do it? I would like to know. Especially the books of Zechariah, Ezekiel, Daniel, the book of Micah, the book of Revelation. How did you unseal those books? How? When you and they don't even have the knowledge of the Leningrad Codex, of the Biblia Hebraica, or the BHK, that it's also known as, that was first published in Stuttgart in 1937. How did you come about your knowledge to become a witness of Yahweh, of the book of Revelation? How in hell can any of these so-called YouTube or Facebook biblical scholars or self-proclaimed two witnesses of African-American parents, oh Jacob, explain any of the prophetic cryptograms of Yud-Heh-Wav Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, that are sealed, especially the book of Zechariah, the book of Daniel, Ezekiel, Micah, and the book of Revelation? How did you do it? But you don't even have the knowledge of the Leningrad Codex that was also used for Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia, or the BHS that was done in 1977, and is continuing to be used for Biblia Hebraica Quinta, or the BHQ, which listed a different order of books for the books of the Ketuvim that is authorized under the Leningrad Codex to this very day. You don't even know what the Kentovim is. How in the world could you be a witness of revelation, of things that must shortly come to pass? How could you show me anything? You can't show me nothing. Who are you to show me something? And you never even looked into any one of the books of the Kentovim. How in hell can any of these so-called YouTube or Facebook biblical scholars or self-proclaimed true witnesses of African-American parents, O Jacob, explain any of the prophetic cryptograms of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, that are sealed, especially the book of Zechariah, Daniel, the book of Ezekiel, the book of Micah, the so-called Maristite, and the book of Revelation? And you are still in a deep sleep and are following the precepts of men. That is according to what is found printed in the book of Isaiah today, chapter 29. Have you read it? Have you read verses 10 through 13 of Isaiah chapter 29? But let me quote it for you. Beginning at verse 10, that reads, as I quote, "For Yahweh, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, hath poured out upon you the spirit of deep sleep, and has closed your eyes, the prophets and your rulers, the seers hath he covered, and the vision of all," that's A-L-L, "is become unto you as the words of a book that is sealed, which men deliver to one that is learned from universities of theology and archaeology and discipline of Christianity and the micra of Christianity, the mikra, saying, read this, read the Kentovim, read it, I pray thee. And he said, I cannot, for it is sealed. Humble yourself and say you can't. Verse 12 says, and the book is delivered to him that is not learned, saying, read this, I pray thee. And he said, I am not learned. Humble yourself. Wherefore, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, my master, the Son, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, for as much as this people draw near me, he said, with your mouth and with your lips, you do honor him, but you have removed your heart far from him, and your fear toward him is taught by the precept of men. End of quote. Now, when you read that, and when you get to the noun, the English is noun, eyes, E-Y-E-S, in its plural form, that is found in verse 10 of that passage, then let it be known to you that it came from the original Hebrew word that Isaiah used, that is known as ayin, spelled A-Y-N in the English translation. And that word ayin means, quote, of mental and spiritual faculties, end of quote. How could you study or read something that pertains to the book of Revelation or prophecy, and your mental and spiritual faculties have been closed? I'd like to know how you opened them, how you got them open. Because when Isaiah said in verse 10 that, quote, Yahweh hath poured out upon you the spirit of deep sleep and hath closed your eyes, end of quote, what Isaiah is saying in that passage, that also proved that Yahweh, Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh, the God of the Hebrews, has poured out upon all people on the planet Earth by saturating every living soul with the power of his omnipotent, his omnipresent, his omniscient spirit. Insomuch until Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh, his power, Yahweh's power of deep sleep, has caused their mental and spiritual faculties to become recondite to the knowledge of any book of the prophets that was sealed by Daniel. I hope you understood what was just said. He closed all eyes and minds and put them in a spiritual, mental, incapacitated state. And this includes the coverage of all 7.2 billion living beings that are counted today in census of the planet Earth. Those whose minds that are educated in theology and those that are uneducated in theology. I am testifying to you and ye of all people on this planet that are measured and are resting upon all 57,255,000 square miles of land that tilts both scales of the planet Earth today. Let me repeat that. I am testifying to you that all eyes Yahweh closed on this planet, all 7.2 billion that are counted today in the census of the United States, all the countries, all 197 countries registered in the United Nations. I'm testifying to you that Yahweh closed the minds of all that exists on this earth today. This whole earth that's measured at 57,255,000 square miles of land. And all those people is tilting both sides of the scale. And both sides of the scales of the planet are being tilted by these evildoers. The balance of wicked weight, the deceitful weight. I am testifying to you, I am, of the mere fact that Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh, Yahweh placed Adam, that you know of as Adam in the book of Genesis, in a similar deep sleep. You can go read it back in Genesis chapter 2. So we're around verse 21. And he did that. Yahweh did that to perform surgery on Adam, put him in a deep sleep. And that's before he removed one of his ribs and blessed it with Shaka, who you know today as Eve. Yahweh put Adam in the same type of deep sleep. And some of you experienced that same type of deep sleep when you had surgery, if you had surgery. That was created by mankind. When you are put under, they call putting under general anesthesia just before you undergo major surgery today. That causes you to know nothing during the process. Nothing. You go into a black hole, a black null and void. Nothing. So how is it that you are in a deep, dark, black hole knowing nothing, and all of a sudden you become two witnesses, or all of a sudden you can decipher the book of Revelation? Isn't that amazing? You know all about the 7 horns and your 7 pipes. You know all about that. You know all about the 2 olive trees. And since you know all about the 2 olive trees, the 7 lamps, 7 oils, so I ask you again. I ask you the same question that was addressed at the beginning, this very same generation, which is, how in hell can any of these so-called clergies, including those seen on YouTube and Facebook and Skype and Twitter, even the bald-headed biblical scholars of TBN and NBT, even those who are the self-proclaimed two witnesses of African-American parents, old Jacob, how can any of you explain any of the prophetic cryptograms of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, that he gave to his son, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, and he sent and signified it unto his servant Yohanan. But after they came from the hands of Daniel, it was sealed in chapter 12 of the book of Daniel. And he took all 40 books of the King James Authorized Version of the Holy Bible that you know today, especially in the books of Zechariah, Daniel, Ezekiel, Micah, and the book of Revelation. How in the world were you able to decipher that? I would love to know. Can any of you answer this question? While you are still sitting in the darkness of hell? Can you? Well, as you sit in this darkness of hell, please explain that to me. Especially since it has now been revealed to the whole world in this testimony that Yahweh has sealed off your mental and spiritual faculties to become recondite to the knowledge of any of the books of the prophets. 2 of the 40 books, of which are sealed under the symbolic parable called, quote, Two Candlesticks, end of quote, that has the power and enough light that could enable you to see all of what is happening in this video recording at this very moment. One light of 2 candlesticks that is now shining allegorically under the Hebrew allegorical name, quote, Zerubbabel, end of quote, that was measured by this very same, quote, man, end of quote, who is now seen sitting on top of this, quote, black horse, end of quote. Quote me. That's why I'm using quotes. Now, since you have the veil removed from your mind, explain the allegorical meaning of Zerubbabel and how it's connected to the light and to the 2 candlesticks and to the black man sitting on top of the black horse. Oh, and by the way, he's also holding a pair of balances in his hand that is weighing that very same one measure of wheat that constitutes the very same witnesses of Yahweh that were sealed in the 3rd seal along with Micah Yahweh, Sar Yahweh. Explain that.